Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Thai-dipped beef tri-tip. That's right, we really should have called this satay-soaked beef tri-tip. But unfortunately, that didn't rhyme. But anyway, I've always wanted to try this little twist on one of my favorite all-time Asian marinades. Plus, since we're heading right into the middle of grilling season, it's never a bad idea to remind people how great and user-friendly the tri-tip roast is. And we'll be getting to the beef briefly. But first, we have to put together our marinade, which we'll do quite simply by adding the following ingredients to a mixing bowl. And we'll start with a whole bunch of minced garlic, followed by some bruised and chopped up lemongrass, which, by the way, I'm going to give you a few tips about on the blog post. We're also going to add a ton of finely grated ginger root, as well as, if you don't mind shedding a few tears, some grated onion. And that's going to do it for our aromatic vegetable base, which means we can continue on with a whole bunch of fish sauce, which a lot of people are afraid of because they don't understand what it is. Okay, once you learn this is nothing more than the liquid that comes off decomposing fish, you realize there's nothing to fear. And then we're also going to go ahead and add a little bit of soy sauce, as well as some seasoned rice vinegar, which is rice vinegar they make with a little bit of salt and sugar in it. And then, of course, we're going to want to spice this up, which I'm going to do with some ground coriander, some ground cumin, as well as some gorgeously colored turmeric. And that is going to be it for the spices. Just kidding. Of course, we're going to put a little cayenne. And then to finish this up, we'll go ahead and dump in some brown sugar, which we're going to want in here to balance out all these intense flavors. And then last but not least, a little bit of vegetable oil, for reasons I'd rather not discuss. Just put it in. And then we'll go ahead and take a whisk and give this a mix. And that's it, our Thai-inspired beef satay-ish marinade is done. And normally that would now be ready to toss in hundreds of little pieces of beef that we would marinate and then skewer before grilling. But I've always wanted to try this as a marinade for a large hunk of meat to put on the grill, in particular a beef tri-tip roast. And there it is, apparently named for its triangular shape, which I believe is cut from the bottom sirloin. And not only is this a relatively affordable piece of meat, but it's also very user-friendly and doesn't require much trimming, as well as there's really no bones or connective tissue, so we pretty much get to eat all of it. And what we'll do is transfer that into our marinade so we can give it the old poke and soak. So let's toss that in, and then take a fork and poke it all over, like, 60 to 75 times. And no, don't count. We'll just do that until we think it's good. We are, after all, the Tribe Called Quest of how many pokes is best. I was actually trying to work in a Q-tip reference, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. But anyway, once our beef has been coated thoroughly and poked severely, what we'll do is cover that and let it marinate in the fridge for anywhere between 2 and 12 hours. And whenever I marinate in a bowl like this, it's not a bad idea to pull it out once in a while and give it a toss, as well as some additional poking. So I did that a few times. And in case you're keeping score at home, I let my marinade for exactly 4 hours. At which point we're going to pull it out of the marinade, and I like to set it down on some paper towels to drain just a little bit. And it probably doesn't matter at all, but I do like to brush off a few of the chunks. And then assuming that our coals are ready, we can head outside and get to roasting. And yes, I did say roasting, not grilling. I'm actually going to cook mine over indirect, fairly low heat. All right, my cooking temperature ranged between 300 and 325 for most of the cooking. And I'm going to give you some different options on the blog for ways to cook this. But for a little change of pace, I decided to go low and slow. And other than brushing on some of the marinade and maybe turning it once in a while, I didn't really do anything except wait for it to get to an internal temp of 130 to 135, which for me is the ideal temperature to cook this to. All right, we don't want to cook this too rare, because like things like flank steak and skirt steak, it can be kind of chewy if we undercook it. So I did check with a thermometer and pulled mine off at about 132 and headed inside to let it rest. Oh, and quick tip, if you have some extra marinade, which you probably will, what we can do is bring that to a boil to sterilize it. And then that's safe to brush on our meat or serve on the side or whatever. So I did brush on a little more. Not that I really needed it, but I did want to show you have to boil it if you're going to use it. But anyway, as usual, we're going to let that meat rest at least 10 to 15 minutes. Truth be told, I got a phone call, so I actually let mine rest about a half hour. But it was still beautiful, as you're about to see as I cut in here. And my first cut did go right into the center, because I wanted to see how moist and amazingly beautiful this was. But then I remembered I always like to take a few slices off the edge, and if the driest, most cooked parts are still moist and delicious, then I know the rest of it's going to be awesome. And as I was cutting, I could not believe how tender this felt. I also couldn't believe I wasn't cutting across a grain. I blame the amazing smell and appearance, as well as my debilitating hunger. But you know what? Even though it wasn't from the middle, and I sort of cut it with the grain, it was still absolutely incredible. Tender, flavorful, moist, and many, many other adjectives. It was basically a perfect piece of sliced roast beef that tastes like beef satay. So I went ahead and sliced up some more, the right way, against the grain, which by the way is pretty easy to see on a tri-tip. And while this meat was quite delicious on its own, when I added my favorite satay condiments, which would be some peanut sauce and a spicy cucumber salad, it became even more fantastic. So I decided to plate some up and eat some more. And by the way, you wouldn't know by watching this video, but some people shy away from tri-tip because it has a reputation for being kind of tough and chewy. But I'm telling you, using this technique, it was not at all. And I'm really not sure how much of that is the marinade ingredients and how much of it was that low, slow cooking, but I really was absolutely thrilled with how this came out. But anyway, that's it, what I'm calling Thai-dipped beef tri-tip. If you're a fan of beef satay, but not necessarily a fan of skewering hundreds of little pieces of beef, then I really do hope you give this delicious alternative a try soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.